Don't get distracted by the bullshit, because that's what it is. It's a distraction. It's a deflection. TSM fans hated me and Monty literally 6 years ago. And for what reason? Because we didn't think their team was the best. We thought they were the second or third best. That is why, and we criticised where they had flaws. That's literally it. You are the president of a huge esports organisation valued at hundreds of millions of dollars. You don't get to hide behind that bullshit shield. Also, initially implying, but even overtly saying, that if anything it would be more of a conflict of interest when Doublelift was in Team Liquid than now, so why bring it up now? That is probably the stupidest angle imaginable, because essentially, within the premise, you are sort of admitting that it is kind of a conflict of interest, right? By the way, provably and objectively is a conflict of interest. And then you're attempting to use the mechanism that if you did something shady or potentially shady months ago, then somehow it's all right now because we didn't call you out months ago. I don't know what you know about the way these things work, but there's not a 2-month statute of limitations on this fuckhead. So why do it? Why bring this shit up? Why talk this way? Because it's effective. When they do this to other people, not to me, it puts a fear of God in those people. It makes them back off even what they're saying or apologise. It makes them even think twice about criticising TSM in the future. Not me, mate. I'm not built like that. It just fuels me. I don't need inspiration to make esports content. I have literally the proof of thousands of videos on this channel alone, but I'm hella inspired to be up TSM's ass with a microscope on the daily from now on. Now, the transcript of what she said, though, was, it's not up to me. For example, no one wants to pick up Dardoch. That's not my fault. So, first and foremost, let's just look at the Dardoch side of this equation, right? Before we get into Doublelift and Lina and TSM and all that good jazz. So first of all, there's a human here whose job is already in question, and now whose future prospects are even more fucked than they may indeed have been if indeed nobody wanted them. Now remember, first of all, we don't know what no one wants to pick up Dardoch means. Like, that could just mean with the initial list of teams he gave Lina and TSM as to where he wanted to go. That might mean with the first negotiations with teams that could pay a reasonable buyout for Dardoch. Remember, it's only halfway through the season. Like, this is not a player you want to just let go for free and then go to another team and potentially beat you in the LCS. You want to sell him for good money. You want to kind of choose where he goes to. And if it's a good team, you want to make sure it's worth it. We don't know that literally means there is no team in the world who wants Dardoch. I'd imagine there definitely are some out there in the world. It's just that if they now come along and try to make a bid for him, they're not going to bid high because they know that nobody else fucking wants him. They're not bidding against anyone except themselves and the fact that TSM presumably wants to offload him. So that's part of the concern there. And by the way, Lina's own fucking words can't be trusted, as we saw in that whole saga of her saying on her Discord, or on a TSM Discord, something to the effect of, like, I've approached many European players. And then later on, when I point out, like, if you approach European players, that's in violation of the poaching rules. And she's like, I didn't approach any European players. Like, oh, fucking hell. So I can't go on your own fucking testimony of what you did or did not do and what you are saying. So be careful with your fucking words, as I've said before. Then we got Doublelift. Wait a minute, Doublelift's on this fucking thing as well. So now, of these 5 main people, 3 of them are TSM people, and one of them's a fucking owner in TSM. Then we got Doublelift, who himself is the person indirectly, directly, but he didn't do it on purpose, inadvertently helping facilitate this fucking league that's wrecking Dardoch, whose interests now are not being best represented, and he needs someone to advocate for him. So is Doublelift, the guy in the fucking room, also the boyfriend and employee of the person who's fucked Dardoch over. Is he going to be able to independently understand the rights of Dardoch, advocate for his interests, and give him the tools necessary to realise his dreams and maximise his potential? Is he fuck? He's fucking the boyfriend of the person we're talking about. It's an outrageous conflict of interest. So let's just go ahead and chuck this in there, shall we? It's already ridiculous that Doublelift himself's vice president on that board. Like, that is absolutely ridiculous. It shows you how fucking nonsense this entire player association is. That the second Doublelift joined TSM, they didn't immediately say, well, we can't have 3 of the 5 main people on TSM, and just get rid of them immediately. Then look at the fact that Bjergsen and Biofrost are there too. Bjergsen is a fucking owner of TSM while he's on the board independently representing the players' rights and interests. That is a direct conflict of interest. It is fucking ridiculous. And this is an issue you have to ask about when you talk about Svenskeren, is clearly he needs to be on a team where he's aggressive, where he's making these plays, but every single jungler who seems to come to TSM gets turned into these passive farm-up junglers. And they seem to have to play a certain way. So is that coming from the coaching staff and their philosophy on how to play the game? Is it coming from Bjergsen, the way he wants them to be played? He's clearly the star player. You clearly do put a lot of focus, as it should, through him. Is that what Bjergsen thinks a jungler's supposed to do? It's concerning because this is a group where Svenskeren was one of the most abused and exploited players in the group because all the other teams at least had good junglers, at least had junglers who were proactive and will make plays, and that costs Svenskeren because first of all, when he just farmed up, that's not his skill set, so he's just wasting his time. And then when he tried to make plays, he was on his own, he was left out on an island, he was fucked, he'd caught out, and he would just feed the game at that point. So he has a choice. Get behind, not do much in the game, maybe do what the coaches are telling you, and then you have to hope all the lanes win, or he can make plays and potentially just feed the game on an international stage. So I feel like he was in a terrible situation. Yes, he played like shit, but he's also, it's a complete waste of time to use him this way, especially when he's an import. If you're going to use an import, fucking go get an NA player who can do that. Or get a really good player who's an import and can play the style you want him to play. The core, the players that were signed, were essentially kept in almost a kind of talent prison where they didn't get to play in tournaments, they didn't go LANs, they didn't go online tournaments. They were in a constant limbo of having to hope that teammates would be signed and not having them signed and trialing players for months and months on end. There was a situation where one of the trialists for the team, the Spanish player Line Pro, came out and actually said in a public statement, Team Solo Mid is by far the worst, by far the organization that has treated me the worst in my life. Finally, after all this drama and all this mismanagement and the back and forwards and the limbo that the players were kept in, this state of purgatory where you're signed, but you can't go elsewhere and you can't play because you haven't got a proper team and you're hoping that player's going to join, but then they go and join elsewhere and have success elsewhere. Finally, after all of that, the players were told that the organization would not be getting an Overwatch League slot, and the players were essentially told, you can transfer, you can be released, that's it, it's over. And it all ended, so it began in January officially, and it ended in early May of this year.
Weird that if we're talking about the world's history, and yeah, you can cite NALCS titles, but what I'm saying is a lot of players on TSM had strong worlds appearances, and then TSM goes and picks them up, and then they're not able to ever replicate those performances again. And you have an insane advantage because Bjergsen is an NA resident, so you can always have two other fucking imports, right? Mm-hmm. So you're one of the only teams in NA that can have a majority import.
Mm-hmm. I'm B3, like,
and I don't think it's true anymore, but for many years you could get the best NA players. You could get any NA player you wanted on TSM.
Which is why I alluded to the topic before. Why weren't these players going this way, Because some of these players end up with teams that fucking sucked. CLG was terrible at the end with Afromu. Meteos literally allowed himself to be fucking benched in 100 Thieves. So, these aren't ideal scenarios for everyone. I agree on the isolated incidents. It's not always easy to make.
Do you think Meteos would have been a good fit on TSM?
Mate, at the moment, all the junglers fucking suck on TSM, so let's just try something different. Maybe let's not just taking the same person and ramming them in the same block over and over again. Like, you know what the whole problem, I'll be real with you, Loco. I'll put all my cards on the table here. Everyone in TSM is world class at one thing only, shifting the fucking blame off themselves in TSM, but never putting it onto one other person, spreading the load-bearing fucking risk all around, and collectively just taking that big L, because he did it as a big family with like a like at the end of The Shining where you're all fucking taking a team photo. It's never an excuse. So it's never Reginald's fault.
And then it was never Reginald's fault. It's
never Bjergsen's fault. He never underperformed. It was never the jungler's fault. It's not our fault.
To be clear, it doesn't happen anymore. But for many years, here's the cycle of TSM. Beginning of the year, Reggie says, our goal is to win worlds. Proceed to dominate NA, then shit the bed at every international event, and then say then make some signings of some new players, be like, we're going to win worlds. It's just like, it was ridiculous.
Two factors here, okay. One is, first of all, every excuse you want to give me for TSM, just compare it to Fnatic, mate. They've rebuilt their entire squad 3 times and made it to Worlds playoffs numerous occasions.
I'm props to Fnatic.
They've taken rookies in again and again and again. They've taken in Febervern and fucking Hooney and Reignover, and
Weepo.
they've taken in
Yeah.
Whippo
Thorin,
and Caps and Brock. So these are nobodies.
Okay, you're calling it excuses. I'm just giving my point of view and like the stuff I know.
No,
Like,
we just have a different definition of the word excuse, mate. I don't even say that an excuse isn't legit. I'm saying that if you always let your excuses limit you, you'll never improve. Everyone that's why we have that saying. Excuses are like arseholes. Everyone has them and they all stink.
okay.
There you go. And the other factor is this. Second factor. The reason why that angle that everyone from NA always goes with, Europe's bigger. You can literally buy all the players in Europe, you cunts. They literally will all go because you have more money. So what you're saying is you have 2 regions you can pick from. Europe has 1, and ergo Europe has an unfair advantage. Like, how does that make any sense?
Literally, they can play more than the Korean teams. You can literally just bring good Koreans over, which is what they've been doing.
Now, what's interesting is later on, he tells this story about how he called up Richard, the CEO of H2K, and offered to pay him to guarantee Svenska in the H2K spot if the tryout for TSM didn't go well. And he says, the call ended with us deciding to spend a day to consider the situation and to come up with terms we could agree on to allow Svenska to try out for H2K while keeping his guaranteed spot on H2, try out for TSM while keeping his guaranteed spot on H2K. And then he says, like, to clarify, I offered to pay him to allow him to have a guaranteed spot on H2K if he didn't get onto TSM after the trial. Now, Reginald, here's another part, okay. So I feel like people are overlooking the part where Reginald made a call, no direct resolution was made in terms of H2K deciding. They were given a window in which we will agree, we'll think about it for a day and we'll talk it over and we'll come back and talk again. Right. Just because you've said that doesn't mean you're actually obliged to then come back and have made a decision or have done the decision Reginald wants to, or even to do so. You could say it and then you could decide, that 1 second after the phone call hangs up, you could legitimately have believed that in the call, H2K, and then afterwards go, actually, wait a minute, why am I doing this to help Reginald? I don't really care about that money. You know what? While I've got this window of a day, I think I'll go to Svenska now. I know there's not a deal in place because we just had that discussion, and I'll just say, hey, I haven't promised anything. I haven't signed anything to Reginald. I haven't made a deal with Reginald. I've just said we'll talk about it again, and I'll use this window to aggressively pursue the deal that I would like. So then he says, however, after the call, Richard immediately reached out to Svenska to attempt to sign him with an increased offer, completely against the fact that we both agreed to think about it and wait. Right. Listen, Reginald, you lost the game, bitch. Don't cry about it. That's the game. Now, Reggie, there's a bunch of times that he talks to the team in the reality show, and some interesting things are said. So one thing that I did find a bit weird was he starts talking about how he wants everyone to communicate more, because obviously last year's team had players who barely communicated. They had fucking Santorin was super silent. They had Dyrus just chills out. They had Lost Boy can speak English but isn't going to do a lot. And Wild Turtle obviously isn't super proactive anyway in terms of comms. So it was all on Bjergsen. So I understand what he means. He wants everyone contributing in terms of communication, like everyone giving information. But then what's weird is he says that they expected too much of Yellowstar joining the team. This is what's weird, because I want that from Yellowstar. I want him to be the captain. I want him to take most of the shot calling, and I want people to feed him information, and then he makes the calls for them. Now, I don't want him to necessarily micromanage everyone and nail their lanes, but I want him to be the number one voice. Now, what's weird is Reginald then goes on to outline that the shot calling should be done by everyone. He doesn't want the team built around one shot caller, and he doesn't even think that's the right way to build a team. Now, that is absolutely, I mean, it's not shocking to me, as I don't think Reginald's a very cerebral, great thinker about League of Legends. He's definitely not good at articulating himself, but it's shocking in as much as that a top Western team with all these resources is really, professing that concept to their players and telling the players that's how we're going to run the team, because I think that's totally wrong. Let's look at the top 4 teams at last year's Worlds. SK Telecom. Marin is the main shot caller. He shot calls a lot of the game, and you can see from the way he plays as he's shot calling most of the game. Rox Tigers, at the time Coup Tigers, Smeb is the main shot caller. He's doing the majority of that. Fnatic, the team Yellowstar was just on. Yellowstar, main shot caller, reads the game, tells everyone all the shit. What, you think Hooney and Reignover are popping in with all their comms? I don't think so. So, I don't think that's a good approach, and I think that belies what some of the problems in the team already are, and are going to be.
I may not have the most supporters in the world, but the ones I do have are straight fire, and they include Mac Pugnatio Rajcula, Frisky, Ahmed Hadjou, Torin, Tobias Bernasconi, Animosity, Tosh, Jensen Goh, and you know it always is a special thanks going out to Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my show? Do you want to see things I say on my Discord, a little piece of straight fire I drop in the Patreon-only channels, stories I tell people in the other ones. Do you want to ask a question in my monthly AMA? Do you want teasers? Find out who the next guests are for Reflections interviews. Maybe you want to be one of those people who takes part in the long-form discussion with me where we talk about whatever's on your mind in esports. Well, if any of those or more sound interesting, why not support me, put your money where your mouth is, and join the Scrilluminati today via the Patreon link in the description box below.